Elian Voss was halfway through his third mouthful of extra spicy beef instant noodles when the front door of their cramped 40-square-meter rental apartment slammed shut hard enough to rattle the thin walls. The flickering ceiling bulbs swayed violently overhead, and Elian froze mid-slurp, fully expecting the old light fixture to crash straight down into his noodle bowl. He didn't even bother lifting his head. He knew exactly what this meant. His deadbeat father, Roland Voss, had lost every last cent again at the mahjong parlor. For the 17th time that month. "Son," Roland yelled at the top of his lungs, his voice loud enough to make the neighbor's corgi start barking wildly through the shared wall. "I've got great news. We don't owe a single cent of death anymore." Elian slurped the last curly noodle slowly, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand without a single flicker of surprise. "Did you finally get a real job?" Roland waved a hand like Elian had just said the most ridiculous thing imaginable. "Even better. I sold you." Elian's chopsticks clattered loudly into the ceramic noodle bowl. Spicy broth splattered across his gray cap-print sweatpants, and he stared at his father in utter disbelief. "You what? Sold me? To who? For how much?" 3 million yuan. Elian blinked at him for 10 full seconds, his mind racing in pure sarcastic chaos. 3 million? I'm worth less than a second-hand Tesla Model 3. I checked, those go for 32 million. You could have negotiated an extra 200 grand. I could have had a lifelong matcha latte fund lined up. Are you kidding me? I could have at least come with a free extended warranty. Roland stared back at him like Elian was the one who'd lost his mind. "What are you complaining about? Cale Thorne is the richest alpha in the entire city. Bright blue hair, devastatingly handsome. Every omega in the city I told him you can give him as many pups as he wants. He agreed to wipe all my gambling debt completely in exchange for you moving in with him tomorrow morning. What more could you possibly ask for?" Elian leaned back in his rickety wooden chair, his heart sinking heavy in his chest. His father had no idea the secret Elian had been hiding for a month. He'd visited the doctor after weeks of crippling stomach aches. After running full blood work and omega fertility testing, the doctor had patted his shoulder gently and delivered the crushing news. Elian had a 0% chance of ever conceiving or bearing pups. Medically impossible. No exceptions. Elian had cried for 3 straight days after that diagnosis, eaten 12 boxes of red bean matcha mochi, and binged sad romance dramas on his cracked old phone to numb the pain. He'd already accepted he'd never have a family, never bear an alpha's child, never fit the standard omega mold everyone expected of him. Now his father had lied straight to one of the most powerful alphas in the city, selling him off as a fertile breeding omega when he couldn't have pups at all. "You lied to him," Elian said flatly. "I'm infertile." When he finds out he paid 3 million for an omega who can't give him a single heir, he's going to break with our legs. Roland waved the worry off dismissively, already reaching for his ratty jacket. "That's your problem, not mine. I already signed the legal contract. You move in tomorrow morning. Good luck with the rich guy." With that, he stormed out the door, most likely heading straight back to the mahjong parlor to gamble away whatever small change he had left. Now that he'd sold his son to clear debt, he had nothing left to lose. Elian sat alone at the dining table for an hour, staring at his half-eaten cold noodles until the broth turned soggy and a thin, unappetizing film formed across the top. When he finally snapped out of his daze, he stood up silently and started packing his things. His luggage was simple: one small hardshell suitcase covered in peeling discount store travel stickers he'd added just to make it look less plain. Half the case was stuffed with frozen matcha mochi he'd stocked in his tiny mini fridge, his beat-up but still fully functional portable rice cooker. and his favorite knit shawls in every shade of gray and cream. He didn't forget his orange tabby cat, Machi, who was currently perched on the couch, happily chewing one of Elian's socks with single-minded determination. Elian slipped 2 return bus tickets into his wallet, just in case he got kicked out of Kale Thorne's penthouse on the very first day. One for himself, one reserved just for Machi, in case the cat needed her own seat on the ride back. That night, Elian couldn't fall asleep. He lay on his thin futon mattress, staring up at a water stain on the ceiling that vaguely resembled a duck silhouette, lost in endless thoughts. What kind of man paid 3 million yuan for an Omega, without even meeting him first? Was Kale Thorne that desperate for a mate in heirs? Was he hideously ugly, so no Omega would willingly date him? His father had called him handsome, but Roland's judgment was always questionable. He once swore a fake street vendor Rolex was a genuine luxury timepiece. Machi climbed onto Elian's chest halfway through the night, kneading his collarbone with soft padded paws and purring like a tiny motorboat. "What do you think, Machi?" Elian whispered quietly, brushing a hand over the cat's fluffy orange fur. "Do you think this cold alpha will throw us out the second he finds out I'm broken and can't have pups?" Machi meowed softly, and Elian chose to take it as a cautious maybe not. Still, he packed extra Machi just to be safe. The next morning, Elian took the subway across the city to the central business district, then stood frozen in front of the towering Thorn Tower for 5 full minutes, craning his neck upward to count the floors. He lost track after 64 stories, his neck aching instantly from the strain. He stepped into the private elevator and pressed the button for the 88th floor, the top penthouse level, marked strictly private residents only. The elevator ride was silent, so quiet Elian could hear his own heartbeat pounding loud in his ears. When the doors slid open, he stepped out into a long, empty hallway with plain marble floors and dim soft lighting. There was only one door at the very end, a massive matte black entrance door that probably cost more than Elian's entire year of rank combined. He knocked once. The door swung open almost immediately. The first thing Elian registered was height, at least 6'3", towering over his own smaller frame. Next came the striking bright cobalt blue hair, styled messy and effortless like someone had dumped the entire summer ocean across the top of his head, polished by an expensive stylist, yet deliberately tousled to look naturally rugged. Sharp angular jawline that looked sharp enough to slice glass. 2 small silver stud piercings glinting in his left ear under the hallway light. He wore a loose white linen shirt completely unbuttoned at the front, no undershirt underneath at all. Elian's eyes drifted down before he could stop himself, catching sight of a small black shark tattoo inked in Akale's left ribcage, followed by an extremely defined set of abs glistening faintly like he'd just finished an intense home workout. Kale Thorne held a neon green protein shake in one hand, his expression cold and icy, like a block of frozen supermarket ice with zero warmth or softness. "You're the Omega your father traded to settle my debt," Kale said flatly, no emotion in his deep, rumbling alpha voice. Elian's brain short-circuited entirely. His eyes locked onto the toned muscles on full display, and the words blurted out before he could bite his tongue. 8. Kale blinked slowly, his cold expression never shifting an inch. "Excuse me." Elian's face burned bright red, embarrassment flooding every inch of his skin like he was about to spontaneously combust right there in the hallway. 8 abs. I counted 8. I'm sorry, it was involuntary. I have really good eyesight, and they're very visible, because your shirt is very open. Which is fine. Totally fine. Great shirt. Nice shark tattoo. I'm gonna stop talking now. Cal stared at him for 3 long, silent seconds, then finally stepped aside without a word to let him inside the penthouse. The interior was exactly what Elian expected of a cold billionaire alpha's home. floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the entire city skyline. Minimalist black and white modern furniture straight out of a luxury magazine spread, zero decorative warmth. No throw pillows, no photo frames, no potted plants, nothing soft or homely at all. The only clutter was stacks of scattered paperwork across the glass coffee table. It was cold, expensive, and emotionally empty, perfectly matching the man who lived here. Elian set down Machi's cat carrier, and the orange tabby immediately jumped out, sniffing Kale's expensive Italian leather dress shoe with obvious suspicion. After a moment of inspection, she decided his bare calf made the perfect scratching post and began kneading it happily. Kale didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't even glance down at the cat ruining his expensive shoe. He just fixed his cold gray eyes on Elian and spoke in a low, steady tone. "Your father told me you're fully fertile and willing to bear me as many heirs as I want." Elian took a deep breath, bracing himself to be yelled at, kicked out, and sent back home on the return bus ticket he'd carefully tucked in his wallet. "My father lied," he said honestly. "No beating around the bush. I'm infertile. The doctor confirmed I have a 0% chance of ever having pups. Medically impossible. I'm really sorry. If you want to send me back right now, I understand completely. I'll work slowly to pay back the 3 million yuan you spent. I work part-time at a convenience store making 3,000 yuan a month, so it'll take roughly 83 years to pay it all off, but I'll do it. I even brought 2 return bus tickets. One for me, one just in case Machi needs her own seat." Elian waited for the anger, the yelling, the immediate phone call to his deadbeat father. He waited to be thrown out onto the street with his cat and his suitcase full of matcha Machi. Instead, the cold, sharp look on Kale's face softened for a split second, shifting into something that looked suspiciously like pure relief. "Perfect," Kale said simply, taking a long, slow sip of his neon green protein shake. Elian blinked in total confusion. "Perfect," Kale nodded, leaning one shoulder against the marble kitchen counter, his unbuttoned linen shirt slipping open even further. "My grandmother has been pestering me nonstop to find a mate and produce great-grandpops for 4 straight years. She calls me every Sunday at exactly 10 a.m. just to yell at me for staying single. Last month, she threatened to set me up on blind dates with every eligible Omega in the entire city if I didn't settle down soon." He let out a quiet breath of genuine relaxation. "If you can't have pups, that's the best news I've heard in 4 years." He shifted forward slightly, laying out the terms of their arrangement clearly and calmly. "Let's lay out the rules of our agreement. You will stay here in the penthouse and pretend to be my official mated partner in front of my family, business associates, and the city social circle. In return, you get free room and board, 10,000 yuan monthly allowance, all your daily expenses fully covered, unlimited access to any matcha matcha you want. I already saw the shipping labels on your suitcase." His tone stayed firm and neutral. "We sleep in separate bedrooms. I will never touch you without your full permission. My personal social life won't interfere with yours in any way. I'll make sure no one in the city bullies or disrespects you. The only hard rule: do not, under any circumstances, ever ask me to button my shirts. Is that acceptable?" Elian stared at him for 10 full seconds, completely stunned, wondering if he'd passed out in the elevator and wandered straight into some perfect alternate heaven. He'd been sold by his gambling deadbeat father to a cold, gorgeous blue-haired billionaire alpha who didn't want fertile heirs, hated being pressured into marriage, had a strange lifelong hatred for button shirts, and was offering him unlimited matcha machi, a lavish penthouse home, and easy monthly pay just for playing fake mate. It was easily the best life offer he'd ever received. Elian immediately held out his hand for a firm handshake. "Deal. I'll never ask you to button your shirt ever. In fact, I'm really good with scissors. I'll personally cut all the buttons off any shirt you own if you want me to." Can I ask why you refuse to button your shirts at all? Is it a fashion statement? A faint, awkward flush crossed Kale's usually cold features, his ears turning the lightest shade of pink. It looked wildly out of place on his stoic, intimidating face. I choked on a suit button at a business gala when I was 22, Kale admitted quietly. I nearly died. Paramedics had to fish the button out of my throat in front of 300 wealthy guests. A newspaper photographer snapped a photo, and it ran front page on the business section the next morning. I swore I'd never button a single shirt ever again after that. I also hate formal suits with every fiber of my being. Elian nodded seriously, fighting hard not to laugh. Relatable. I choked on red bean matcha mochi last week and swore I'd never eat it too fast again. I still eat it every day, just smaller bites, slower pace. For the first time, Kale's lips twitched at the corners, like he wanted to smile, but had forgotten how to let the emotion show openly. The first week of living together was far less terrifying than Elian had imagined. Kale left for work promptly at 7 a.m. every single day, always in a different unbuttoned linen shirt. White, cream, light blue, navy, soft gray, never once bothering to fasten a single button. Elian started leaving a small plate of homemade matcha cookies on the kitchen counter every morning before Kale left the penthouse. Partly out of awkward politeness, not wanting to eat Kale's expensive groceries without contributing anything back, and partly because he stress-baked cookies at 2 a.m. whenever he couldn't sleep in his massive guest bedroom, easily bigger than his entire old rental apartment. Kale would walk straight past the cookie plate each morning, his face blank and unreadable, never acknowledging the treat at all. But every night when Elian headed back to the kitchen after Kale returned home, the plate was always completely empty, wiped clean down to the last crumb. One day Kale even left a short handwritten note on the marble counter. The cookies were acceptable. Make them again. Elian quickly figured out Kale kept the penthouse air conditioning locked permanently at 16 degrees Celsius. The alpha ran naturally hot, yet stubbornly refused to admit he ever got cold when he fell asleep working late on the living room couch. The first time Elian found him passed out on the couch at 2 a.m., stacks of work paperwork scattered across his chest, his body shivering faintly in his sleep from the overly cold air, he quietly draped his softest gray knit shawl over Kale's broad shoulders. The next morning, Kale acted like nothing had happened at all, pretending he hadn't noticed the extra warmth. But Elian spotted the shawl draped neatly over the arm of Kale's office chair for 3 straight days afterward, before it mysteriously turned up washed, folded perfectly, and laid on Elian's bed as a quiet, silent thank you. Machi the orange tabby cat quickly claimed Kale's toned abs as her personal permanent heating pad. Every time Kale settled onto the couch to work on his laptop, Machi would jump straight onto his lap, curl up into a fluffy orange croissant on his stomach, and fall asleep instantly. Kale would pretend to be annoyed every single time, complaining quietly about orange cat hair shedding all over his expensive designer unbuttoned shirts. Yet he never moved an inch, sitting perfectly still for hours on end, one hand typing away on his laptop, and the other unconsciously petting Nachis for slow enough not to wake her up. Elian once snuck a quick photo of the quiet moment, capturing Kale's cold, focused expression while Machi napped peacefully on his chest. Kale noticed immediately afterward and fixed him with a sharp glare. "Delete that photo." "No way." Elian shot back, grinning. "This is blackmail material for when you ever try to kick me out. I'm keeping it forever." "I'm not going to kick you out," Kale said flatly, going back to typing his reports. "You make decent cookies. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." Elian teased lightly. Kale's ears flushed pink again, and he refused to reply, keeping his eyes locked firmly on his laptop screen. The first time one of Kale's former flings showed up unannounced at the penthouse door was on a quiet Thursday afternoon. Elian was in the kitchen attempting to make homemade red bean matcha mochi. Because his frozen stock had run out early, and his online delivery order was delayed by hours. He was covered in rice flour from head to toe, his messy hair sticking up in random tufts, wearing duck-shaped fuzzy house slippers, and an old apron he'd found tucked in the back of Kale's empty kitchen cabinet, printed with the bold words "Kiss the Cook." He held a half-finished bowl of instant spicy noodles in one hand, hot sauce smudged faintly on his cheek, mid-snack break from baking. When the doorbell rang, Elian opened the door without a second thought. Standing on the doorstep was breathtakingly handsome, tall, elegant, perfectly styled dark hair, head-to-toe designer luxury clothes, the kind of polished beauty that turned heads everywhere he went. Elian recognized him instantly from city gossip websites. Rin Hale, the top male model in the region, photographed alongside Kale at galas and events over a dozen times in the past year. Rin blinked slowly at Elian, taking in his flour-covered hair, duck slippers, saw-streaked cheek, and messy apron with obvious confusion and faint disdain. "Where's Kale?" Rin asked coldly. "He's in the home gym downstairs," Elian replied casually, unbothered by the judgmental look. "Shirt's unbuttoned as usual. Do you want a pack of red bean matcha mochi while you wait? I have the expensive imported Hokkaido kind, technically Kale's stock, but he buys them for me anyway. I'm eating them, so you can have one too if you want." Before Rin could even formulate a reply, Kale walked out of the home gym hallway, a white towel slung around his neck, his shirt still fully unbuttoned, sweat glistening faintly across his defined chest and abs in a way that felt wildly unfair to anyone within eyesight. The second Kale spotted Ron, his already cold expression dropped several degrees colder, sharp and unyielding. "What are you doing here?" Kale asked, his voice sharp and final. "I told you we broke things off permanently 3 weeks ago." Ren's eyes welled up with dramatic tears instantly, his soft features twisting into hurt sorrow. "I missed you. I thought we could talk and fix things. Who is this random Omega you've brought into your home?" Kale stepped immediately beside Elian, close enough that Elian could feel the faint heat rolling off his broad chest, marking clear territory without a single extra word. "He's my mated partner. Leave." Rin stared at Elian in blatant disbelief, taking in his messy appearance once more, noodle bowl in hand, sauce on his face, flour in his hair, silly duck slippers, and scoffed quietly. "You chose him over me? I was willing to quit my entire modeling career just to take care of you. I even custom-tailored 3-piece Italian wool suits for you to wear to formal galas." Kill's reply was deadpan, no emotion, no hesitation. "He never asks me to button my shirt." Rin froze completely for 3 full seconds, his face flickering through shock, humiliation, and frustration all at once. Without another word, he turned and ran toward the elevator, sobbing dramatically all the way down the hallway. Elian watched him leave calmly, then took a slow slurp of his instant noodles, turning to glance at Kale. "Is that your standard breakup line now? Do you use that for all your exes?" Kale wiped sweat from his jawline with the edge of his towel, his expression still neutral. 90% of my breakups end with that exact line. 9 out of 10 people I date eventually try to force me into wearing formal suits and buttoning my shirts. It gets annoying very fast." Elian snorted, taking another bite of noodles. "Fair enough. I'd break up with someone too if they tried to make me stop eating matcha mochi entirely. That's fundamental incompatibility." "You have hot sauce on your cheek," Cal pointed out suddenly. "I know. It's a fashion statement," Elian retorted playfully. This time, Kale actually smiled. A small, barely noticeable curve of his lips, genuine and soft, the first real smile Elian had ever seen on his cold face. An hour later, the city's biggest celebrity gossip account posted a candid photo of Ren Hale leaving Thorn Tower with red puffy eyes, the caption blowing up instantly across all social media. Kale Thorne's brutal new breakup line breaks records. Sources confirm he chose a casual omega and duck slippers over the city's top supermodel. The comments section exploded with speculation. Everyone guessing what Kale's iconic one-liner had been. Probably something about his hatred of button shirts again that I heard he once dumped someone for gifting him a formal tie. Rumor says he ended a fling just for suggesting he wear a winter scarf. Elian laughed so hard reading the comments that he snorted mochi crumbs out of his nose. It hurt badly, but it was absolutely worth it. A month after moving in with Kale, Elian had to attend Grandma Alara Thorne's birthday dinner, the first family event they'd fake attend as a mated couple. Grandma Alara lived in a traditional old courtyard house in the historic district of the city, with red wooden pillars, winding stone paths, and a peaceful koi pond in the central garden. She had silver hair tied neatly in a tight bun, sharp wise eyes that missed absolutely nothing, and a cozy apron printed with the words "World's Best Grandma" across the front. She opened the front door the second they stepped up to the gate, took one quick look at Elian, and immediately pinched his cheek gently with a warm smile. And I specially prepared red bean soup for you, dear. I heard you love red bean sweets. Elian blinked over at Kale in surprise. You told her I like red bean, everything? Keel's ears flushed pink again, avoiding eye contact slightly. You eat red bean matcha mochi every single day. It was a logical deduction. During dinner, halfway through braised pork and steamed fish, Grandma Alara set down her chopsticks and fixed both of them with her sharp, knowing gaze. So when are you two giving me great-grandpops? Elian panicked instantly, opening his mouth immediately to admit he was infertile, ready to apologize and explain the entire situation to the kind, elderly woman. Before he could get a single word out, Cal cut him off smoothly. We don't want pups. We're perfectly happy, just the way we are. Grandma Alara snorted softly, taking a slow sip of her jasmine tea. Good. I don't care one bit about great-grandkids anyway. I just wanted you to stop bringing home every random omega who tries to force you to button your shirts. She leaned back in her wooden chair, recalling past drama with clear amusement. The last omega you brought here tried to sneak into your room while you slept and sew extra buttons onto every single one of your shirts. I had to kick him out of the house at 3 a.m. He sat by my koi pond crying for an hour straight afterward. Elian nearly choked on his braised pork, eyes widening in shock. He actually did that? Apparently he thought if all your shirts had buttons sewn on, you'd eventually give in and start wearing them properly, Grandma Alara said, shaking her head. I told him it was the stupidest plan I'd ever heard. My grandson's traumatized by shirt buttons. We respect that in this family. Kyle looked like he wanted to sink straight through the wooden floor of the courtyard dining hall, embarrassment clear in his tense shoulders. On the quiet drive back to the penthouse in Kale's luxury silent car, the city lights blurring past the tinted windows, Elian turned to glance at him. You didn't have to cover for me like that, Elian said softly. I could have told your grandma the truth about me being infertile. She seemed kind enough to understand. Kale kept his gaze fixed on the road ahead, his tone quiet and firm. It's none of her business. It's none of anyone's business. I don't care if you can have pops or not. I never have. Elian's face warmed with quiet fondness, and he turned to stare out his own window, hiding his soft smile so Kale wouldn't tease him for it. 2 months later, the annual City Business Gala arrived. The most high-profile social event of the year for billionaires, CEOs, and elite socialites across the region. Everyone in the city expected Kale Thorne to finally put on a formal tailored suit for the occasion. Instead, he showed up wearing an unbuttoned black silk collared shirt, tailored slim black dress pants. No suit jacket, no tie. Exactly like always. He brought Elian as his official +1. Elian wore the nicest outfit he owned. A soft cream knit sweater and matching black tailored pants. An outfit Kale had quietly laid out on his bed 3 days prior with a small handwritten note. For the gala. It matches my shirt. All the surrounding CEOs and wealthy guests stared openly when they walked into the grand ballroom side by side. Halfway through the night, Kale's biggest business rival approached them with a smug smirk and a glass of champagne in his hand. Carter Ward, a middle-aged alpha with a loud beer belly and an overinflated superiority complex. Kale Thorne, Carter drawled, looking Elian up and down with obvious mocking disdain. Heard you bought this Omega just to breed yourself an heir. Also heard he's completely infertile. What a waste of 3 million yuan. You could have bought a dozen fertile Omegas for that price. Or at least one who looks like he actually belongs at a high-end gala instead of a convenience store checkout counter. The temperature in the crowded ballroom seemed to drop 10 degrees instantly. Kale's expression turned colder than Elian had ever seen it, his gray eyes sharp and dangerous. He slipped one arm firmly around Elian's waist, pulling him close against his side in a clear protective hole. First, Kale said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear clearly, I did not buy him. He is my partner, not a transaction. Second, he continued, his tone steady and unshakable. He makes the best red bean matcha mochi in the entire city, something no other Omega in this social circle could ever manage. Third, he's the only person I've ever met who has never once asked me to button my shirt or wear a formal suit against my will. Fourth, he is worth more than your entire failing company combined. Fifth, I have never wanted pups. I only want him. Silence crashed over the surrounding crowd instantly. You could hear a pin drop on the polished marble floor. Carter Ward's face burned bright red with embarrassment, his mouth opening and closing uselessly like a fish out of water. He finally turned and walked away as fast as he could, nearly tripping over his own dress shoes in his rush to escape the awkward spotlight. Someone in the crowd started clapping softly. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom erupted in quiet whispers and impressed murmurs. Elian's face burned hot with embarrassment, leaning slightly into Kyle's side. You didn't have to make such a big scene like that. Yes, I did. Kale replied quietly, only loud enough for Elian to hear. He insulted you. No one gets away with disrespecting what's mine. Later that night, halfway through the gala, Elian spotted Kale standing by the floor-to-ceiling ballroom windows talking quietly to a stunning Omega with soft mint green hair and an elegant floor-length gown. Their heads were close together, the green-haired Omega smiling gently and touching Kale's arm lightly as they chatted. Elian's heart sank immediately into his stomach, a sharp twinge of jealousy and insecurity settling heavy in his chest. Right. He's still a famous playboy. I'm just his fake convenient mate for family and social show. He'll replace me soon with someone elegant, wealthy, fertile, someone actually worth 3 million yuan. Unable to stand watching the quiet interaction any longer, Elian left the gala early, taking a taxi straight back to the penthouse alone. He immediately started packing his suitcase again, carefully wrapping each box of his precious matcha mochi, folding his gray knit shawls, mentally calculating exactly how much he owed Kale, subtracting the cost of mochi, cookies, rice, electricity for his portable cooker, every small expense over the past few months. It would probably take him 100 years to pay it all back now, but he'd do it anyway. He was halfway packed when the penthouse front door opened, and Kale walked in, his blue hair messy from the night wind, still wearing his unbuttoned black silk gala shirt. He froze the second he saw Elian folding his sweaters into the suitcase. What are you doing? Kale asked quietly, confusion laced in his tone. Elian didn't look up, keeping his hands busy folding fabric. I saw you talking to that green-haired Omega at the gala. I know you're going to replace me soon. It's fine. I'll find a small cheap apartment, pay you back the 3 million plus, all living expenses slowly. I already deducted the mochi costs and cookie ingredients from my first planned payment. Kyle blinked slowly, then let out a long, tired sigh, walking over to take the folded sweater gently out of Elian's hands. That Omega is the owner of the Uji matcha farm, Kyle explained patiently. I was asking him to reserve the limited edition first harvest matcha for your birthday next month. I was showing him photos of the tea fields, that's all. It was incredibly boring small talk. I only pretended to be interested because I wanted to secure the best matcha batch just for you. He paused, his voice turning rougher, softer, more vulnerable than Elian had ever heard it. I don't want you as my fake mate anymore. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you for 3 months, but I always lost my nerve. I don't care that you're infertile. I don't want heirs. I want to eat your homemade matcha mochi for the rest of my life. I want you to drape your shawl over me when I fall asleep working on the couch. I want mochi to keep sleeping on my abs and shedding orange hair all over my shirts. I want you to count my abs every time you walk in on me after a workout. He stared straight into Elian's eyes, his cold exterior completely dropping away to reveal genuine quiet affection. Every other person I've dated only ever looked at my unbuttoned shirts and told me to dress properly, to act mature, to fit the billionaire CEO image. You count my abs, bake me cookies, leave me warm shawls, cut buttons off unwanted formal shirts, and never once ask me to be someone I'm not. I'm in love with you, Elian, not a fake mate. You. Elian's eyes stung with sudden tears, blinking them back quickly. But I was sold to you by my dad for 3 million, less than a second-hand Tesla. I'm just a debt payment. Kale let out a real, unreserved laugh, the first full laugh Elian had ever heard from him, warm and genuine. I'll pay your father an extra 200,000 yuan right now, just so you get your lifelong matcha latte fund like you originally wanted. I'll transfer the money tonight. Elian laughed through his lingering tears. Really? Really? Kale repeated softly, leaning down to cup Elian's face gently in his palms, brushing the stray tears away with his thumbs. You're worth more than 32 million. You're worth everything. He leaned in slowly and kissed him, soft and a little awkward, like Kale was out of practice with real heartfelt affection after years of empty casual flanks. His shirt still hung open, and Elian could feel the warm heat of his skin under his hands when he rested them lightly on Kale's chest mid-kiss. Elian pulled back slightly, blinking up at him with a playful glint in his eye. Wait, still 8 abs. Correct count. Kale laughed again, leaning back down to kiss him deeper, softer, more sure this time. You can count as many times as you want for the rest of our lives. 1 year later, they held a small, intimate wedding ceremony in Grandma Ilara's courtyard garden. Kale wore an unbuttoned white silk shirt, no suit, no tie, staying true to his lifelong hatred of formal constrained clothing. Elian wore a matching soft cream sweater, perfectly coordinated just like their gala outfit. Grandma Ilara officiated the ceremony herself, standing under the garden's cherry blossom trees with a warm, amused smile. Machi the orange tabby served as the official ring bearer, attempting to chew on the wedding rings twice during the ceremony before Grandma Ilara gently distracted her with a fish treat. When it came time for vows, Grandma Ilara turned to Elian first, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Elian, do you take Kale Thorne to be your lawfully wedded partner? I do, Elian replied firmly. Do you promise never to ask him to button his shirts for any reason? I do, and I've already bought special sharp scissors to cut off any buttons anyone ever tries to sew onto his shirts against his will. The small crowd of family and close friends laughed openly at his reply. Grandma Ilara then turned to Kale, hiding her smile well. Kale, do you take Elian Voss to be your lawfully wedded partner? I do, Kale said without hesitation, his gaze fixed solely on Elian. Do you promise to provide him with unlimited matcha machi and a lifelong monthly matcha subscription for as long as you both live? I do. I already set up a weekly delivery subscription that arrives every Tuesday, without fail. Elian's deadbeat father Roland showed up at the wedding reception later that day, trying to sneak in through the back entrance after hearing about the ceremony from city gossip websites. He planned to beg for more money, leech Alpha's son's wealthy alpha husband for the rest of his life. Kale opened the back door before Roland could even knock, still wearing his unbuttoned white wedding shirt, his expression cold and intimidating as ever despite the joyful occasion. Your son is now my husband, Keel said firmly. You still owe me $3 million plus interest for the emotional damage you caused him by selling him off like property. Leave now. Security will escort you off the premises. We have full camera coverage on the property. If you ever try to trespass again, I'll have you arrested immediately. Roland muttered angry complaints under his breath and left without another word, never seen in the city again after that day. Rumors spread he'd moved to a distant town and tried to sell another family member to pay his gambling debts, only to fail miserably. He ended up stuck working a dead-end job at a local car wash, forced to live with the consequences of his own greed and cruelty. Karma had finally caught up for good. That night, Elian lay comfortably on Kale's chest in their now shared penthouse bedroom, finally moving past separate bedrooms for good. Machi curled up on Kale's other side, purring like a tiny motorboat as usual. Elian slowly ate a box of red bean matcha machi, savoring every sweet bite. You know, Elian mumbled quietly, resting his head against Kale's chest. My dad sold me because I was infertile. I thought I was broken, useless, unlovable because I couldn't give an alpha heirs. I thought my life was over the day I got that doctor's diagnosis. Kale ran his fingers gently through Elian's soft hair, his touch warm and tender. It was the best thing that ever happened to both of us, Kale said softly. If he hadn't sold you to settle his debt, I would have spent the rest of my life dragging myself to endless boring galas, avoiding button shirts forever, dating people who only wanted to change me into someone I'm not. I would have never gotten to eat your homemade matcha cookies every morning, never gotten to have you drape shawls over me when I'm cold, never gotten to have machi napping on my abs every day, never gotten to find someone who loves me exactly the way I am. Elian snorted softly, half asleep already. Did you see the gossip account's wedding post today? Caption says, Kale Thorne's Playboy status officially retired. Shirt still unbuttoned as usual. Husband in matching cream sweater looks adorably confused in every photo. Kyle laughed quietly, pressing a soft kiss to the top of Elian's head. Good. Let everyone know your mind forever. Elian settled deeper against his chest, eyes growing heavy with sleep, his hand resting lightly over Kale's defined abs without even thinking. 8, he mumbled half asleep. Kale kissed his forehead again, pulling the soft blanket up over both of them. Always 8. Forever. Machi meowed softly in quiet agreement, curling tighter into Kale's side. Outside the penthouse windows, the city lights twinkled bright against the dark night sky. Somewhere far away, a local mahjong parlor closed its doors for the night, but neither of them paid it any mind. They were exactly who they were. No forced changes, no pressure to have pups, no demand to button shirts. Just two people who'd found perfect, peaceful happiness in each other's flaws and quirks. Cold War Alpha once determined to stay alone forever, forever wanting everyone gone. Until fate handed him the one Omega who fit his life perfectly. Until his quiet little family felt complete. Until every wall he'd built around his heart crumbled away for good. And it all started the day a lonely, matcha-loving Omega got sold to a blue-haired alpha who hated buttons more than forced marriage. 6 months after their quiet courtyard wedding, the penthouse on the 88th floor had slowly shed its cold, lifeless edges. The minimalist black marble countertops were now permanently dusted with faint traces of matcha powder. A woven cat hammock hung beside the floor-to-ceiling windows, occupied 90% of the time by Machi, who had officially claimed Kale's sunlit living room as her eternal kinging. Soft cream and gray knit blankets were draped casually over every piece of sleek modern furniture, scattered intentionally by Elian to strip the sterile luxury of its emptiness. Kyle still refused to button a single shirt. The rule remained unbroken, carved into their quiet daily routine like an unshakable vow. His closet was lined with endless unfastened linen, silk, and cotton tops in muted tones, each one carefully picked out by Elian. Every formal button shirt that had ever been gifted to him was locked away in a storage closet on the lower floor, untouched and forgotten. Elian kept his pair of sharp tailor scissors in the kitchen drawer, a silent, humorous promise to eliminate any button that dared to threaten Kale's peace. Their daily rhythm had settled into gentle, predictable bliss. Kale woke at 6:30 each morning now, 10 minutes earlier than before, just to watch Elian sleep. The Omega curled into messy bundles of blankets, his soft hair falling into his eyes, cheeks flushed with warm sleep. Machi would be sprawled across Elian's legs, heavy and unapologetic, pinning him to the mattress like a fluffy orange-weighted blanket. Kale would lean against the bedroom door, his unbuttoned night shirt slipping off one shoulder, and stare. He had never understood domestic warmth before Elian. For years, his penthouse had been nothing more than a cold resting place, a container for his wealth and loneliness. Now it was a home, lived in, messy, unpolished, and infinitely precious. Elian always woke to the faint smell of broiled matcha. Hale had taught himself to make the beverage perfectly, bitter yet sweet, tailored exactly to Elian's picky taste. The billionaire who once survived solely on neon green protein shakes now kept a cabinet stacked with mochi, matcha cookies, and red bean syrup, every item handpicked for his maid. "You're staring again," Elian would mumble sleepily every morning, his eyes still half closed as he stretched beneath the blankets. Kale never denied it. He would simply walk over, brush a strand of hair from Elian's forehead, and murmur a quiet, truthful line. "I like looking at what's mine." The business world still whispered about them. Gossip accounts never grew tired of posting candid photos of the blue-haired cold billionaire and his quirky, ordinary Omega. The internet had long since abandoned mocking Elian. Instead, the public adored their bizarre, perfect dynamic. Fans compiled endless threads listing Kyle's infamous anti-button rules, Machi's daily abdominal naps, and Elian's chaotic baking adventures that left the luxury penthouse covered in flour. Carter Ward, Kale's bitter rival, had suffered a catastrophic company collapse 3 months after the gala humiliation. Bad investments and public backlash had dragged his empire into ruin. Rumors circulated that Kale had quietly orchestrated every downfall. Slow, calculated, merciless. He never admitted it openly, but Elian knew. The cold alpha protected what belonged to him, and he erased anyone who dared to sneer at his mate. Rin Hale, the supermodel X, had fled the city entirely. He deleted every social media account and accepted an overseas modeling contract, never to return. Even the most persistent tabloids could not track him down. Kale never spoke of him again, the former fling reduced to a meaningless footnote in his rewritten life. Grandma Alera visited every weekend without fail. She would arrive carrying paper bags stuffed with homemade dumplings, red bean pastries, and handmade knitted scarves for Elian. She openly spoiled Machi, bringing premium fish treats for the orange cat, who had stolen her affection. The sharp elderly woman never once brought up heirs or pups again. She simply smiled and watched the pair, grateful that her stubborn grandson had finally found someone who loved his broken quirks. Everything was calm. Everything was perfect, until the rainy Tuesday morning that shattered their predictable peace. It was pouring outside, thick gray rain streaking down the penthouse windows and blurring the entire city skyline. Elian was standing in the kitchen, dusting flour across the counter as he baked matcha shortbread cookies. Kale sat on the sofa, going through monthly business reports, Machi curled heavily across his stomach as usual. The doorbell rang suddenly, sharp and out of place in their quiet morning. Elian tilted his head, wiping flour off his cheek. "Are we expecting someone?" "No," Kyle replied instantly, his tone dropping into the low, vigilant drawl of a guarded alpha. He rarely received unannounced visitors. Every guest was vetted, scheduled, and approved weeks in advance. He stood carefully, shifting Machi off his abs without disturbing the sleepy cat. The orange tabby merely grunted, rolled onto her back, and continued napping on the leather cushion. Kale crossed the spacious living room and unlocked the front door, his posture rigid and alert. On the hallway floor stood a young social worker in a crisp navy uniform, holding a small sleeping bundle wrapped in a plain cream blanket. Rain dripped from the edge of her umbrella onto the marble floor, leaving faint dark water stains. "Mr. Thorne?" The woman spoke politely, her expression tight with awkward hesitation. "I apologize for the sudden visit. We've attempted to contact you for 2 weeks with no response. This infant was left at a city emergency shelter 2 months ago. His birth mother listed you as the only emergency contact on her confidential documentation." Kale froze entirely. His blue hair was slightly messy from the indoor wind, his unbuttoned cream shirt hanging loosely over his chest. He stared down at the swaddled bundle, his gray eyes sharpening into unreadable frost. "That is impossible," he said flatly. "I have no children. No documented relations." The mother was a former anonymous one-night acquaintance, the social worker explained gently. She passed away from unexpected postpartum complications shortly after birth. There are no other living guardians. Legally, you are his biological father. Elian paused mid-baking, the baking spatula slipping from his fingers and clattering onto the marble counter. He walked slowly toward the doorway, flour still dusted on his forearms, duck slippers soft against the cold floor. He peeked over Kale's broad shoulder, his breath catching softly at the sight of the tiny baby. The infant was sleeping soundly, his chubby cheeks pink and warm, a faint tuft of pale blue hair curling atop his small head. His tiny fingers were balled into loose fists, and his quiet breathing was soft enough to vanish into the rain's patter. Blue hair, an unmistakable Thorne family trait. Elian's mind blanked for a full 10 seconds. He had accepted forever that their home would remain childless. He had made peace with his infertility, cherished their quiet, simple life, loved their small family of 3, himself, Kale, and Machi. He had never once imagined a 4th member would stumble into their perfect routine. Kale's jaw tightened sharply. His entire body went rigid, the cold defensive alpha instinct flaring to life. "I was never informed of the pregnancy. I have no intention of raising a child. I will sign legal guardianship over to another eligible family." Before he could finish the sentence, the baby stirred in the blanket. His tiny eyes fluttered open, revealing soft pale gray irises identical to Kale's. The infant tilted his small head, locked his gaze onto Elian, and let out a quiet, breathy coo. One small, fragile hand stretched upward, tiny fingers curling weakly in the air, as if reaching for the flour-dusted Omega standing behind his father. "Mom," he mumbled. The word was soft, broken, barely formed. A faint babble that should have meant nothing. Babies babbled random sounds constantly. It was scientifically normal, meaningless infant noise. But time froze in the penthouse hallway. Keel stopped breathing. The social worker's eyes widened in stunned shock. Elian's knees went weak, his hand flying to his mouth to muffle his quiet gasp. The baby repeated the sound again, clearer this time, his gray eyes never leaving Elian's face. Mom. Machi, woken from her deep nap, padded silently over to the doorway. The orange cat circled the baby bundle once, sniffed the tiny infant's hand, then sat firmly beside Elian's duck-slippered foot, as if standing guard over the strange new small human. Kale stared at the infant, then slowly turned his head to look at Elian. The cold sharpness in his gray eyes melted away completely, replaced by raw, speechless confusion. He had spent his entire adult life avoiding commitment, rejecting family, running from any form of permanent attachment. He had hated chaos, unpredictability, messy, unplanned disruptions. Yet this tiny blue-haired baby had called his mate Mom before he could even properly pronounce his own father's name. You heard that too, right? Kale asked, his voice unusually rough and quiet, almost disbelieving. Elian nodded numbly, his eyes glistening with sudden warm tears. Yeah, I heard it. The social worker cleared her throat softly, breaking the thick, stunned silence. He's only 2 months old. He shouldn't be forming coherent sounds yet. This is extremely rare. She held out the baby gently toward Elian. Would you like to hold him? Before Kale could logically decline, before his cold business mind could list every reason why an infant would ruin their peaceful life, Elian reached out. He accepted the warm bundle carefully, his flour-dusted hands cradling the tiny baby against his chest. The infant instantly nestled into his collarbone, his small fingers curling into the soft fabric of Elian's cream sweater. He sighed softly, snuggling closer, and did not make another sound. Elian glanced up at Kale, his eyes shining with fragile, helpless fondness. We can't send him away. Kale stared at the baby curled into Elian's chest, at the faint blue hair matching his own, at the gray eyes that mirrored his soul. He thought of his grandmother's empty koi pond, of their quiet, empty bedrooms, of Machi's lonely afternoon naps on the empty sofa. He thought of Elian's quiet, sad glances at children in public, the soft longing he had always hidden behind his cheerful smile. He had once wanted everyone gone. He had built cold walls to keep the entire world away. He had hated chaos, hated change, hated messy, unplanned things that disrupted his perfect, controlled life. But looking at his mate holding their accidental son, hearing that single quiet mom echo in the silent hallway, Kale knew he would never let either of them leave. Keep the paperwork, Kale said to the social worker, his tone final and unshakable. We're keeping him. The social worker exhaled a relieved breath, handing over the stack of legal documents and a small bag of baby supplies. His given name on documentation is Silas. You may rename him legally whenever you wish. Once the door closed and the rain continued pounding against the windows, the penthouse fell back into quiet stillness. Elian stood in the entryway, rocking the sleeping baby gently in his arms. Machi circled his legs repeatedly, curious and protective. Kale stepped forward, his large hand brushing lightly over the baby's soft blue hair. Silas, he murmured. I like it. We'll keep it. Elian tilted his head, smiling softly through lingering tears. Silas Thorne. It sounds perfect. Kale wrapped one arm securely around Elian's waist, pulling him and the baby into his warm chest. His unbuttoned shirt brushed against Elian's shoulder, the familiar cedar scent wrapping around their small new family. I never wanted children, Kale admitted quietly, his mouth pressed against the top of Elian's hair. I spent years convincing myself I was built for solitude. I was cold. I was empty. I pushed everyone away. Elian leaned into him, one hand still gently supporting Silas's sleeping head. You're not cold anymore. No, Kale agreed honestly. His gaze dropped to the tiny baby nestled between them, the infant who had sealed their fate with one single babbled word. I'm not. By noon that same day, Kale had emptied an entire spare bedroom on the 75th floor, ordering custom minimalist baby furniture to be delivered within 3 hours. He purchased endless soft blankets, hypoallergenic baby formula, tiny onesies in muted blue and cream, matching their signature couple color palette. He hired a professional night nurse for backup, then secretly told the nurse to take paid leave most days, because he and Elian wanted to figure out parenthood together. Grandma Alera arrived an hour after the furniture delivery, carrying a massive woven basket stuffed with hand-sewn baby clothes. She did not question the sudden appearance of a blue-haired infant. She simply pinched Silas's chubby cheek, smiled knowingly, and said one quiet sentence. "I knew this family needed one more stubborn blue-haired troublemaker." Machi accepted Silas with surprising grace. The orange cat abandoned her daily abdominal naps on Kale's torso to curl beside the baby's crib every night. She patrolled the nursery like a fluffy, furry bodyguard, hissing quietly at any stranger who approached the sleeping infant. When Silas began to squirm and whimper in his sleep, Machi would bat his tiny hand gently with her paw until he settled back into calm slumber. Elian quickly fell into the rhythm of parenthood. He baked less frequently now, trading matcha cookies for midnight feedings and gentle lullabies. He dressed Silas in tiny soft sweaters, matching his own cream-colored wardrobe. He braided tiny faint blue strands of hair with delicate silk ribbons, taking hundreds of photos to store in a private encrypted album only he and Kale could access. Kale adjusted his entire work schedule. He started finishing all corporate meetings before noon, rushing home to witness every small milestone. Silas's first yawn, his first wobbly grab at Machi's fur, his second quiet mumble of mom whenever Elian stepped into the room. The cold billionaire learned to change diapers with ruthless precision. He learned to warm formula to the exact temperature Silas preferred. He learned to rock the infant to sleep on the living room sofa, his unbuttoned shirt acting as the perfect soft blanket for the tiny baby. Machi would curl beside them both, turning the once empty sofa into a crowded, warm family nest. One quiet rainy night, 3 weeks after Silas arrived, Elian sat on the living room carpet, watching Kale hold their son beneath the dim, warm lamplight. The alpha's blue hair fell messily over his forehead, his shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest, his cold gray eyes soft with unending devotion. Silas lay against Kale's bare chest, his small hand fisting into the fabric of Kale's collar. The baby stared up at his father, then turned his head toward Elian and babbled the word again, clearer, louder, perfect. "Mom." Kale glanced over at his mate, a quiet, genuine smile tugging at his lips. "You hear that? He only calls you Mom, never me." Elian laughed softly, crawling across the carpet to lean against Kale's shoulder. "He has good taste." Kale tilted his head, pressing a slow, gentle kiss to Elian's forehead. His fingers brushed over Silas's tiny blue hair, over Machi's fluffy orange fur, over Elian's warm cheek. He looked at his messy, imperfect, endlessly precious family and understood the truth he had spent a lifetime avoiding. Cold alphas did not need empty luxury. They did not need cold pinhouses or endless wealth or distant superficial flanks. They needed someone who would never force them to change. Someone who loved their broken quirks. Someone who brought warmth into their frozen, empty world. He had once wanted everyone gone. He had pushed the world away with cold stares and unbreakable walls, until the matcha-loving Omega with duck slippers stumbled into his life, until an orange cat claimed his abs as a permanent bed, until his tiny blue-haired son whispered one single word that sealed his heart forever. "Mom." Outside, the rain slowed to a gentle drizzle. The city lights glimmered through the tall windows. Somewhere in the distance, an old mahjong parlor closed its doors. A disgraced gambler scrubbed car windows for minimum wage. A bitter ex-model remained stranded overseas. A cold billionaire finally understood what it meant to be home. Kale held his family tight, never intending to let go. No buttons. No pressure. No forced perfection. Just love. Raw. Unpolished. Infinitely permanent. And deep in the quiet warmth of the 88th floor penthouse, the Cold War Alpha was finally, completely, irreversibly home.